What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today we're going to be talking a little bit about the draft, where today we're doing the final mock draft. Going into the draft on Thursday night is where we start. And so I put together the last thing of what I'm thinking. Ended up having one trade kind of middle of the draft here. But I wanted to use two different sites just because these tend to be a little erratic, right? I went to use PFF. I'm not going to pay for PFF just to use it one time. To do an entire draft, I only did 3 rounds, but it was like the most realistic draft that I've done so far. Like I was keeping up with who was going where, the most realistic by far so far. And I kind of used some of that and tried to be realistic even when guys were dropping. I tried to be realistic about the other draft that I did too. So getting in this, of course, if you enjoy the content, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. But as we get into this, in both of these drafts, actually the first 2 picks are the same in both drafts. And by all accounts, it feels like the Colts are going to go Colston Loveland if he's there. Now, I did see something else where the Bears could draft Colston Loveland at 10. I also thought it was interesting that Chris Ballard had talked in his press conference and he was just saying numbers. Right on the outside, he was just saying numbers, but he said whether we're picking at 14 or 10 or 25, we're going to get the best player we possibly can. And so, hey, are we going to move up to 10, try to get Tyler Warren? Are we going to move up to 10 to try to make sure we get Colston Loveland? How is that going to go? Because I know in one of the mock drafts that I did, that we're not talking about just a random one that I did, Tyler Warren goes 9, and then Colston Loveland ended up going 10, right? So if that ends up happening, things change a lot for the Colts. If that were to happen, I feel like probably trade back for the Colts. But for the purposes of this, we end up drafting Colston Loveland. And just to give you an idea of how the draft fell up to this point, when I talk about the realistic draft, the most realistic draft I've done so far, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Shador Sanders, Mason Graham, Aston Genty. A lot of people talking about Aston Genty going to the Jaguars, just specifically today. That is a hot topic. He might not fall past 5 to the Jaguars. As a Colts fan, that would suck. Yeah, that not great if that happens. A very good player. But then that would leave the Raiders to get Armin Mimbo, tackle. Abdul Carter falling to 7 seems like the most unrealistic part of this entire thing. Kind of interesting how this all falls. I guess in this circumstance, if you're the Jaguars, you have to pick between Ashton Genty and Abdul Carter. Pretty good situation to be in. Patriots not passing up on either of those guys, in my opinion. But as we continue to go again, Abdul Carter goes at 7. One way or another, he's getting picked before we pick anyways. Panthers take Will Campbell at 9. Saints take Tyler Warren. Matthew Golden to the Bears at 10. I don't even know how to say this guy's name. McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. He goes to San Francisco at 11. Linebacker Jaheed Campbell goes to Dallas at 12. And then Will Johnson. Very common theme. Will Johnson going 1 pick before the Colts at number 13 to the Dolphins. And then back-to-back Michigan players as we go Colston Loveland. 3 Michigan players in the top 14 and 4 Michigan players overall here in the first round as Kenneth Grant gets drafted by the Vikings at 24 as a guy who roots for Michigan. Pretty cool to see all that. Really good draft class here for Michigan, but that's how that falls to the Colts. We end up with Colston Loveland. There were some good options, like Malachi Starks was there. I end up not picking him. He goes to 21. Ends up with the Steelers there. There were some good players available, but in terms of need, in terms of talent, in terms of just what I thought was best, Colston Loveland ends up as a pick there. And again, second round pick was the same in both these drafts as well. I think at pick 45, there's a really good chance we're able to get Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, linebacker. This is somebody a little undersized for a linebacker, but he does have great athleticism, able to cover a decent amount of field. So when you talk about us needing a linebacker that can cover, like it sounds like JC, Mr. Jalen Carlisle, is going to be a guy that we're going to depend on this upcoming season. From Ballard's comments, it seems like that. So are we going to take a linebacker this early? I don't know. I just think where things fall right around that 45 area. I think this is like easily maybe the best choice that we have. I think, who was it? Jalen Milroe was still available in this one, and I thought about putting him there. I just think that's too high to take a quarterback when you already have quarterback competition. It's going to make things louder. Not what you want to do. Plus, you get Carson Schwarzenegger, and all of a sudden, past this year, you don't have to have any connection to Zaire Franklin if you don't want it. And I think you can get deeper. Obviously, EJ Speed and Grant Stewart both gone, so we got to do something at linebacker. I think this just made a lot of sense. There's not a whole lot to this. I think the kind of athlete that he is, I think what you can develop him into and mold him into, I think could be really, really good. Bringing him in and could be really good for us as we have a new linebackers coach to start shaping these guys. Okay, and then in the third round, I go lineman. In one draft, it's my PFF draft. It ended up being an offensive lineman, and the other draft that I did ends up being a defensive lineman. And in the PFF draft, I end up getting an A for this one because of a need and putting somebody in a spot that we need. Round 3, pick 80, guard from Georgia, Tate Ratledge. Hopefully that's the way that's pronounced, Ratledge. Probably messing that up. Nonetheless, getting a physical. I mean, this dude's 6'6", playing on the inside. 300 plus pounds. I think it was 329 was what I saw. But huge human being, playing him on the inside. Right, this is like Mekhi Becton playing. Going from tackle to guard, and now he's absolutely dominating. I think having a big body guy, somebody that you can get with Tony Sperano and he can mold him the way he needs to. But this was like a no-brainer. In the third round, if he's still available at pick 80, take him. Okay, in my other draft, I actually traded back and he wasn't available. I thought, hey, maybe I can get lucky and he'll still be available. No, he wasn't. I traded back from 80 to 88, but I also picked up pick 144, this coming from the Patriots. And at the end of the day, we end up with a defensive tackle in this one. So again, in one of them, we go offense. In this one, we go defense. From Tennessee, Omar Norman Lott. This is a guy that I think has great potential. There needs to be some size added, but you can do that. You can easily do that. Get him with the right nutrition staff. Get him with the strength and conditioning. Right, you build this guy up a little bit. What he can give you from an interior rush standpoint, it could be really good for us, like a change of pace coming off the bench. I do think this is somebody that can provide some value. Obviously, we need Defoe and Grover to like carry the load in terms of, the inside of that defensive line. But if you can add somebody in this draft, a draft class with a lot of defensive tackles to choose from, I think you can find a guy in the third round that can do you some good in the upcoming season and somebody that can be really good going forward into the future. Again, Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle, Tennessee. Now, this is where things start to get a little interesting through the middle rounds and trying to figure out where do we go position-wise? Where do we go talent-wise? And for me, I want to go with DJ Giddens, running back, Kansas State, 117 overall is where he gets picked. And this is strictly off of what he can do from a receiver standpoint and his versatility as a receiver. Good runner, plenty of experience, plenty of production in college. Kansas State has had some success over the last few years, like somebody that knows what it takes and somebody that can do a little bit of everything. Now, coming into the NFL, just like a lot of running backs, he's going to have to get better at pass production. It's really one of the knocks on him, and really refine himself as a runner, just continuing to get better, continuing to develop like most running backs will need to do. But again, at pick 117, as I looked into it and trying to figure out this guy or that guy, who do we pick here, DJ Giddens just fit the bill for somebody that, past this year. You keep him with Jonathan Taylor for a few years, Khalil Herbert. Hopefully really good for us. I've been a fan of his for a while. Hopefully he's able to have an impact with us. And then if he goes on, if we get a guy in this draft that we like, then he goes on somewhere else, has some success. That's what I hope, and just as a fan. But as we continue to go forward, the pick that we gained from the Patriots, and this is the second time I've done a trade and ended up grabbing this guy with one of the picks that we traded. I think with the picks that we have, just doesn't really fall right in the range to be able to get him. But RJ Mickens, safety Clemson, same argument that we had before. His size, his athletic profile, a lot of things about what he does reminds me of Cam Chancellor. If we can keep him, we can develop him, we can make him be like Lou Anarumo and this defensive staff. They're going to make guys aggressive. So you put RJ Mickens in that mix, and then what happens, right? He's a safety. We just signed Cam Bynum. We have Nick Cross. He looked really good last year. Needs to develop, still needs to hone in and get better in things. And it could be another tough year for Nick Cross if learning this new defensive scheme. How's he going to do? How's Cam Bynum going to do? But I think if you add RJ Mickens, you're getting depth. You have a guy that until he's able to get on the field full time can be an effective weapon on special teams, and he can just develop in this hopefully develop in this defensive system. Hopefully we're able to keep Lou and a defensive staff and start having some success. That would be the ideal situation. And I think RJ Mickens is going to be a weapon for somebody, man. Not like super high-end athleticism, but certainly athletic enough. Runs a 4.49, so he's not running a 4.3, but in the back end, like his instincts, his intelligence kind of helps him out in that aspect, to give him that little bit of extra juice that his legs just don't have for him. So somebody really interesting at 144, and overall, with after trading pick 80, we end up with two players on the defensive side of the ball, with a defensive tackle and a safety coming from those draft picks. And then here we're going to have a couple of offensive guys coming up where we have, once again, I'm almost certain I picked him with pick 151 in our first mock draft, Riley Leonard, cornerback, Notre Dame. And this is one that initially I just put him in there because this is a guy that can scramble. Maybe you can figure it out. Maybe he'll figure it out in the NFL. He has a bunch of experience. That's one thing with him, a bunch of experience. And I think it's been readily apparent, here for Colts fans, experience matters. And I think with his experience and what he's done and kind of turning Duke around and going to Notre Dame, and it started not great at Notre Dame, but toward the end of the year, that offense really started to figure it out and click. It wasn't an incredible offense there at Notre Dame, but they started to get things turned around at the end of the year. And obviously, if I'm not mistaken, played in the national championship, right? So I think Riley Leonard, interesting prospect. I did see him do the Gruden's QB camp. I watched that, and was actually really impressed with some of the stuff that I heard, some of the stuff, just watching him process and his memory and how easy it was for him. Just really impressed, and so I'm fine. 151, you take Riley Leonard, add him to the quarterback competition, and let's see what happens. He's a guy that is developed. When you talk about Anthony Richardson being so young and needing to develop as a man, Riley Leonard doesn't have really that. He's one of these guys, stayed in college longer, and he's coming out older than a lot of the younger starting quarterbacks are coming out of college. And then at 189, offensive guard, Clay Webb from Jacksonville State. This is somebody that, again, you're drafting another interior offensive lineman. This is a guy, and because in this draft, in the PFF draft, we draft a guy in the third round. If we had gotten him in this draft, we're not doing that. But in this particular draft that I did, we get a guard later, and try to fill in a spot, somebody that I believe is 292. I'm pretty sure is his weight. So I can't remember what I saw. Maybe I can find, here we go. Okay, 6'3", 312. Sorry, I was thinking of a defensive lineman. Our 7th round pick is who I'm thinking of. So yeah, this is, when we're talking about Clay Webb, it's really like his length and lateral quickness seems to be the thing that's really getting harped on as like negatives here. But these are things, again, those are things that I think, ideal length, you can't coach that. But lateral quickness, like you can work on footwork and stuff like that. Somebody that has a physical presence on the offensive line, and somebody that does well in pass protection. He's been coached by Rich Rodriguez, and that sort of working with a coach like that and being under a coach like that, the level of discipline that's going to come with that is something that I really like. The experience that he has is something that I like. So if we can grab Clay Webb, 189. From, again, Jacksonville State, then I think that'd be a fine draft pick. Offensive guard at 189. And then 232, last pick in the draft, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, defensive tackle, Georgia. Somebody who's had some success, even smaller than I thought, 6'4", 276. But this is a guy that, because of his size, you kind of line him up outside. If you lined him up at defensive end, his RAS changes, but with him listed as a defensive tackle, RAS is 9.79, explosive athlete, but again, 276 for an interior lineman, but he does give you options, right? And we had a guy like that with Dio Dingbo. We no longer have him. He gave us options on defensive line, a guy that was kind of a middle body, a guy that you could put on the inside but wanted to have him on edge. So Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, somebody that another defensive tackle, 2 defensive tackles drafted in this, and I think both could end up on the roster, whether it be active roster or the practice squad. So 2 interesting options for us there, in my opinion. And again, just to go through this very quickly, overall, we pick up 1 draft pick in a trade with the Patriots, give up pick 80, we get 88 and 144. We know Colston Loveland, tight end, Michigan. Carson Schlesinger, linebacker, UCLA. Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle, Tennessee. DJ Giddens, running back, Kansas State. RJ Mickens, safety, Clemson. Riley Leonard, quarterback, Notre Dame. Clay Webb, guard, offensive guard, Jacksonville State. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, defensive tackle, Georgia. That ends up being the 7-round mock draft, our final mock draft before the draft happens. We will have a video. I don't want to go live during the draft. That's kind of Pat McAfee and the NFL. They own during the draft. We're not going to worry about that here on this channel. We will talk about it that night, though. When the pick happens, I'll do a video. We'll talk about it. And so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you get notified for that. And then I think I want to try to go live on Sunday. We'll see what happens there. I don't want to guarantee that at this point because life happens and we're here in the off season. But I do want to try to go live Sunday, talk about the draft, where we are, what do we need to do, what's the expectation. There's going to be so many to be answered, a lot to come in the coming week, in the coming weeks. As we continue into the NFL offseason, finally here with the draft. So again, make sure if you enjoy the content, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you continue to get notified anytime we drop any content on this channel. Of course, appreciate you stopping by for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.